You were doing something ordinary when the signal arrived. A Tuesday, perhaps. You were not thinking about the great, silent expanse. Why would you? For all of history, the universe had offered nothing but cold, empty silence in return for our shouts. Our music, our math, our hope, all swallowed by the void. At the deep space listening post, they heard it first, a whisper in the dark, a single structured pulse repeating every 103 minutes. It was too perfect to be natural. It was a clockwork heartbeat from a place we called the Shepherd's Crook. A quiet knock on a door we never knew was there. The news broke on a Wednesday. Over breakfast, the world changed. You were no longer alone. We were no longer alone. The experts on television were stunned, joyful, and terrified all at once. The pulse was real. It was a message. And it was waiting for an answer. But there was a strange, unsettling detail. The signal was powerful, beamed with incredible energy. Any advanced civilization should have heard it. Yet, when we asked our galactic neighbors, they reported only silence. The message, it seemed, was for you, for Earth alone, an invitation or a test. The arguments were immediate. Should we go? Should we answer the knock? Fear, born of old stories about invaders from the sky, wrestled with a burning, unquenchable curiosity. The need to know was a fire in our collective soul. And so, the decision was made. We would go. One ship, our very best, would cross the void. It would deliver our reply in person. The age of loneliness was over. You looked up at the night sky, at the invisible point of light in the Shepherd's Crook. You knew, with a mix of hope and fear, that we were on our way. The ship was the Stardust, a sleek spear of silver and white, a testament to a decade of frantic, united work. It was a tiny bubble of Earth sent out into the vast emptiness. Its mission was both simple and impossible. Find the source. Make peaceful first contact. Come home. You watched the launch on your screen, a silent prayer shared by billions. Inside, a crew of 6. The best humanity had to offer. Commander Eva Rostova, forged in the cold equations of space travel. Dr. Aris Thorne, a biologist who dreamed of alien ecosystems. And Kai, the historian, a man of books and archives, tasked with understanding the unknown. The journey was long, years stretched into the void. The crew became your distant family, their video logs a lifeline to your hopes. They told bad jokes to pass the time. Aris claimed his orchids were better conversationalists than the ship's computer. Eva threatened to turn them into a salad. It was the humor of people under immense pressure, and it made them feel real. As they neared the Shepherd's Crook, the signal grew from a whisper to a clear, insistent pulse. It was coming from a system much like your own, from a barren, rocky planet's only moon. The Stardust descended, moving past the silent planet toward its small, gray satellite. The first leap was almost complete. The crew gathered on the bridge, their faces tight with anticipation. They were about to meet the beings who had called to them across the stars, or so they thought. The Stardust cleared a ridge on the moon's surface. The landscape below was not empty. It was a graveyard, a field of derelict ships scattered like the bones of fallen titans. They were impossibly large, ancient, and silent. The smallest was 10 times the size of the Stardust. The largest was a metal mountain, a mobile world now dead and covered in the dust of eons. Commander Rostova held the ship in a steady hover, her whisper the only sound on the bridge. My God. These were not the wrecks of a great battle. There were no weapon scars, no blasted hulls. They simply seemed to have stopped. An entire fleet, a civilization's worth of ships, abandoned in an instant. There were no life signs, just the cold, silent majesty of their ruin. And the pulse. It was stronger than ever, emanating from the center of the debris field. There, nestled amongst the dead giants, was a small, unassuming structure, a perfect cube of black, glassy material, pulsing with a soft, blue light. This was the source. This was the heart of the mystery. Commander Rostova made the call. We're going down. They had not come this far to turn back. They landed a safe distance away, and a party of 3, Rostova, Aris, and Kai, stepped onto the moon's surface. They were ants in a cathedral of ruin. They walked toward the whispering core. The cube was 20 feet tall, its surface seamless and smooth. A faint vibration hummed through the soles of their boots, in sync with the blue light. Kai, the historian, saw them first. Faint, geometric lines etched on the cube's surface. A language, a story waiting to be told. They had found a Rosetta Stone for a lost civilization, but the story it told was not one of welcome. The boarding party chose a smaller vessel to explore. Smaller, of course, was a relative term. They entered through a gaping cargo bay door into absolute silence. The corridors were curved and organic, like the arteries of a dead leviathan. On the vast bridge, they found what they were looking for. A data core, still intact. A library of the ship's logs. Kai connected his device. Data, encrypted but whole, began to flow. He worked for days, fueled by coffee and a desperate need for answers. He learned the name of the beings who built these ships, the Lumina, the Shining Ones. And he learned another name, a name spoken with symbols of fear, the Elder Ones. These were not the Lumina. They were something far, far older. The Lumina had come here as scholars, drawn by the signal just as you had been. They believed the cube was a relic of the Elder Ones, a key to understanding the secrets of the universe. They were wrong. As Kai translated the final, frantic log entry from the Lumina captain, his hands trembled. The signal was not a monument to the Elder Ones. It was a prison they had built. And the Lumina, in their quest for knowledge, had just picked the lock. The signal was not a greeting. It was a desperate, ancient alarm. A warning left by the first beings in the universe. A warning against a foe so terrible it had to be caged for eternity. The prison was failing. Their presence had weakened the ancient locks. The whispering core was now screaming. A silent, psychic scream that announced to the cosmos that its prisoner was awake. The enemy of the Elder Ones. A foe that consumes stars. Kai stumbled back from the console, his face pale. "We have to go," he whispered. Now the stardust fled the graveyard, but the damage was done. They raced for home, carrying the terrible truth. They had not discovered a new friend. They had unleashed an old monster. The message from the stardust arrived months before the ship itself. It shattered the world's fragile hope. Panic erupted, but it did not last. Humanity, faced with extinction, found a new and terrible purpose. The world's leaders convened. The choice was stark. Hide in the dark and hope the monster passes by, or stand and fight. Humanity chose to fight. We would not go quietly into the night. Project Aegis was born, the forging of the shield. It was the most ambitious undertaking in our history. Factories built fighters instead of cars. Shipyards built destroyers instead of tankers. The planet united under this single, desperate goal. Survival. The brightest minds gathered. Old rivalries were forgotten. A fleet was born from the fires of desperation, built in orbit and on the moon. Dozens of cruisers, hundreds of destroyers, thousands of fighters. But we knew it would not be enough. The Lumina were far more advanced, and they had been extinguished in a moment. We needed a weapon of last resort. Then came the second voice, a new, aggressive signal, answering the alarm from the shepherd's crook. It was not a message. It was a predatory roar. It was a targeting lock. The hunter had heard the dinner bell. It was not heading for the distant prison. It was heading for Earth. The time frame had collapsed. The months we thought we had were gone. A ragged wound tore open in space near Jupiter. From it emerged the hunter's ship. It was not a vessel of metal and wires. It was a monstrosity, a swirling cloud of black, metallic particles miles across, a cohesive swarm that blotted out the stars. It drifted toward the inner solar system, its destination clear. Mars. The void swarm, as Kai had named it from the Lumina logs, descended upon the red planet. It did not hail. It did not demand. It began to feed. Tendrils of the black cloud reached down, and where they touched, the ground dissolved. Rock, dust, and ice were consumed. Mars was being eaten alive. The first stand had come. The Aegis fleet, humanity's brand new shield, scrambled to intercept. Commander Eva Rostova, now in command of the fleet from the flagship TS Valiant, gave the order. Engage. Our ships were flies attacking a giant. Our weapons were stones thrown into a hurricane. The swarm absorbed the attacks, reforming as quickly as it was damaged. Losses were heavy. Destroyers fell first, their shields overwhelmed, their hulls dissolved by smaller swarms that broke from the main cloud. The cruisers held the line, buying precious time. Time for the scientists on Earth to finish the ultimate weapon. Time for Kai, the historian, to find a weakness. He found it. Buried in the Lumina data was a flaw, an echo of the prison that had held the swarm for so long. A rhythmic imperfection in its hive mind. It was a desperate gamble, but it was a chance. Kai's plan was insane. They would not attack the swarm with weapons. They would attack it with confusion. The plan required a massive power source to broadcast a disruptive signal. The Lumina logs spoke of another Elder One device, a dormant, planetary power generator hidden somewhere in our solar system. Kai found its location, beneath the ice of Europa, the sunken weapon. A team raced to Jupiter's moon. As the fleet over Mars was being torn apart, they drilled through miles of ice. They found a vast, subterranean ocean, and in its dark heart, a perfect sphere of swirling, liquid metal. The Elder One device. Kai placed his hand on its interface. He focused his mind, broadcasting the activation sequence he had learned from the logs. The sphere awoke. Power surged across the solar system. On Earth, the scientists had their source. They aimed the space-time device, no longer a weapon, but an instrument of chaos. They broadcast Kai's signal, a symphony of fire aimed at the heart of the void swarm. Over Mars, the effect was immediate. The swarm cloud wavered. The hive mind fractured. Commander Rostova seized the moment. "All remaining ships," she commanded, her voice ringing with desperate hope. "Fire at will." The last of the Aegis fleet unleashed everything they had. This time, the damage stuck. The swarm, lost in confusion, could not heal. It broke apart, dissolving into a harmless cloud of black dust. The battle was over. Humanity had won. In the aftermath, the universe felt different. We were no longer the lonely species that had shouted into the void. We were the people who had faced the void swarm and survived. We had a new purpose. The Elder One device on Europa was a key to a future we had only dreamed of. The whispering core in the shepherd's crook was still there. And the Lumina logs spoke of others, other prisons, other star-eaters sleeping across the galaxy. The Elder Ones had left behind a universe filled with cages, and we had found the keys. We became the keepers of those keys, the guardians of the prisons. You looked up at the night sky, no longer a void of loneliness, but a space filled with history and danger. Humanity had found its role, not as conquerors, not as victims, but as guardians, the new guardians, keepers of the peace, the watchers on the wall of the universe. The silent signal had been a warning, but it had also been our salvation. It had given us a reason to be united, a reason to reach for the stars, ready for the darkness, and ready to hold it at bay.